There aren't heaps of examples of good competition karate-style fighting in MMA, but Gunnar Nelson stands out as one. Sure, he's no Kyoji Horiguchi, but the principles are just the same. Establish a distance that's too great for the opponent to comfortably attack, then strike out of a bounce. The bounce serves two purposes. The first is to fill your opponent's vision with motion in order to hide your intentions.
The
second is to sneak the fighter into range without extending his stance. In striking, as in fencing, you drive into your strike off your back foot. By bouncing both feet into range without extending the stance, a fighter has that thrust off his back foot once he has already finished his bounce. So the mark of a good use of the bounce is that a fighter's back foot goes forward with him. Nelson uses the bounce to enter on his right straight and immediately snatches up a clinch afterwards. This is called punch and clutch, and in boxing it allows a fighter to throw hard punches and fall into a clinch, eliminating the threat of the opponent countering. In MMA, it allows fighters like Fedor to flow beautifully into takedowns. All of Nelson's best work has been done by scoring the right hand from the bounce, then flowing into a takedown on his stunned opponent. Nelson will normally go straight to a double collar tie off his right hand rather than digging straight for underhooks or weaving into a takedown attempt. Francis Ngannou's former training partner Cyril Gain does the same thing much slower at heavyweight. The main problem with this extreme distance style of striking, and one that I touched on before the Horiguchi-Nasukawa kickboxing match, is that it tends to hold up poorly over the rounds because it relies on rapid footwork and explosive movement. When a point stylist slows and comes down off the balls of his feet, he is much more hittable, especially if he is in the habit of only retreating on a straight line. While we all remember Damian Maia styling on Nelson because it might have been Maia's most impressive grappling clinic of all, Rick Story's performance was tailor-made to slow Nelson down and punish him on the feet. Story started with low kicks and proceeded to shuck Nelson off each time Nelson shot the right hand and closed for the clinch. Once it became clear that Nelson couldn't keep Story down, Story began digging body shots each time Nelson burst in and tried to grab a hold. Story also shot left straights to the body out in the open, and as a result, by the latter half of the second round, Nelson's movement was already slowing. And by the third, fourth and fifth rounds, Nelson was starting flat-footed, telegraphing slower bursts, and failing to get out of the way when he had finished his strikes. Without being able to comfortably fall into the clinch, Nelson's lack of strict boxing fundamentals meant his only answer after firing was to pull straight back. The truth about Nelson is that he's a grappler with a means of closing the distance more than he is a striker. The less his opponent is concerned about him achieving the clinch, the less effective his striking becomes. In his most recent fight against the filthy Cowboy Oliveira, Nelson mixed things up with a crisp left hook out of the bounce and instead drove Oliveira to the fence and dropped on his hips to complete the takedown along the cage. These sort of considerations in ringcraft are likely to put Nelson in better stead against the better wrestlers that he fights, but it will be interesting to see what Nelson can do against a very savvy counter-wrestler and striker in Leon Edwards.